Hello, I'm here in Budapest to talk about fintech in Hungary. My guest today is Mary Collins. She's the Deputy Managing Director at MKB Fintechlab. Hi, Mary. It's great to have you on my podcast.
Thanks, Michael. It's great to be here.
All right. So today we'll talk briefly about the local fintech ecosystem and the MKB Fintechlab. So Hungary is a country of 10 million people and has been making its mark on the European fintech ecosystem map for quite some time. It has a few successful startups, including IND, which was acquired in 2014 by Mrs., now Finastra, Doorzoom, and Fintech Blocks. Fintech Blocks is actually a Fintechlab portfolio company that has built the API platform for four banks in Hungary. But let's start at the beginning. So Mary, how does the traditional financial sector looks like here in Hungary?
Yeah, so we have quite a good representation here. A lot of the major international players are here, like BlackRock, Morgan Stanley, MSCI. They have pretty big operations and employ thousands of people, mostly developers, but an increasing number of business people and analysts as well. And this is actually a little bit of a conflict for us in the entrepreneurial space because, it's great that there's a lot of interest from these multinational companies, but they can sometimes suck up the talent from the ecosystem. But that's something that we recognize is happening, and we hope to create opportunities that are equally exciting in innovation as well.
I think it's especially difficult to compete given how much resources they have and the brand they already have, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and just the scalability and market potential for a startup is small in countries like Hungary. So it's a safer choice to go with one of the bigger companies, but we still see a lot of potential in that, and we partner with these kinds of organizations as well and co-create. And I think that there's kind of understanding growing on both sides about how even the marketing for some companies like BlackRock, how they're promoting these jobs is much more entrepreneurial than it used to be. So I think there's some, depending on the demand, people want to work for themselves and they want to have that kind of autonomy and creativity, and the ability to do those kinds of roles even inside traditional organizations is growing, and it's a cool trend that we see.
That makes sense. So what are really the top banks in Hungary? Are there any names that we probably might recognize, or?
Yeah, so probably the bank with the biggest market share is OTP, a Hungarian bank, and then other big Hungarian banks are MKB, our bank, and Budapest Bank. And then we have the local subsidiaries of some of the bigger Western banks like Erste, Raiffeisen, KBC, and Intesa Sanpaolo. Those are kind of the biggest players here.
Right. Sounds like you have a lot of multiple banks working here. So what about the fintech ecosystem here? How has it evolved here in Hungary over the past few years?
Yeah, so I've been involved in startups and innovation for quite some time, and I would say there really wasn't much of a fintech buzz at all until around 2016. We at Fintechlab were the first program to start that's focused on fintech, first innovation lab on this topic. And since then, it's really exploded, I would say. There's two other bank-sponsored programs, a lot of other professional organizations that are creating content and following the trends in fintech. And yeah, I think it's really just been the last kind of 3 years, I would say, since it's developed.
Got it. So how does the ecosystem looks like today? I believe you have more than 50 fintech startups so far and multiple programs and partnerships here in Budapest.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're happy to have led the charge. I would say. I think fintech. The definition of fintech has also really expanded. So, in the beginning, it kind of was thought of as just something for banks or, anybody that's trying to sell to banks. But now with the advent of, PSD2 and the topic of open banking is also really in the forefront, and it's opened up fintech to a lot of industries also outside the financial sector. I mean, fintech, anything that has a payment module can really be connected to fintech. So I think people are starting to realize that, and thinking about anything that's innovative that it involves money, which almost every business has money, right, at the end of it. So there's kind of more and more of a a play that companies can be made to align with this. And actually, that's something that I've seen companies do, just to become part of the buzz. Even a traditional company can be a fintech company if there's a value proposition for a bank or a big corporate.
Yeah, I think my one complaint here is that a lot of banks do have their innovation centers, so because they just want to be, because fintech is really a keyword right now and is a sexy keyword, and a lot of banks just want to be part of it, so they're doing something, but I don't think it's really working well. I think there's only a few players out there who are actually trying to do something innovative. Everybody else just kind of follows up, right?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I tend to be more inclusive and supportive. So if somebody wants to define themselves as fintech, I'm sort of okay with that. I think it means more than just crypto and blockchain. I think that's also maybe a common misconception. People kind of think, okay, well that's another buzz. Definitely a hyped area that. That's maybe my complaint. So there's all these blockchain companies now that I really feel like is sometimes the use cases there are a bit of a stretch. They just throw in blockchain to kind of become part of this sexy new trend. But as far as fintech is concerned, I think it's the label comes from the financial world, but I think like I said before, with open banking, there's lots of opportunities for new what could you do with the data from banks? That opens up a lot more, I think.
Let's move on to the VC funding for fintechs in Hungary. Are there any funds that have specific mandate in that area, or they tend to be much broader?
Yeah, there's a firm called BNL Growth Partners. I think they're the only ones besides us that have a clear fintech focus. As far as they do a great job with that. Aside from the other banking programs. So within MKB Group, there's Fintechlab, and we do small investments through our accelerator program. We also manage a small fund that we call Open Innovation Fund that does tickets up to 150,000 euros. Then we also have Solus Capital, which is our more traditional Series A fund that can also do follow-on funding for some of our teams, but they're open to non-fintech solutions as well. And then we're also part of a fund called Audita that has a certain amount of the fund that's earmarked for fintech. But again, all of these things are through MKB Group and managed by us.
Okay. And I also, it's my understanding that you have a really strong collaboration with the National Bank of Hungary, and you're actually one of the few nations that already have a fintech sandbox, right?
Yeah, this is definitely a major selling point for the Hungarian ecosystem. The Hungarian Central Bank is very supportive for fintech innovation and really ahead in the region for sure, just leading the charge, with the sandbox and the innovation hub. So, there's still a lot of open questions, but I think we're definitely far ahead of a lot of other countries, and they're very supportive and open-minded. So that's a great thing. And we do have a close relationship with them. We're fortunate to work with them. We do courses together, and they're supportive of our startups. So I can't speak highly enough about our regulators here in Hungary.
Wow, that's kind of unusual, but that's great. It's good to hear. All right, so let's talk about the Fintechlab. So this is the organization that was started in 2016. It was founded by MKB Bank. It's one of the major banks here in Hungary, and has been very successful ever since. You're actually working with a third batch of startups right now. What are the main goals of the Fintechlab, and how are you trying to achieve that?
Yeah, so at Fintechlab we have basically 4 pillars of activity. One is, and they all sort of support each other. So one is building the community. So when we first started, fintech was really just kind of becoming a buzzword and hype, and we wanted to support education around that, and so we organized a lot of events. We have a regular FinTech Academy every year that is a mix of educational and inspirational content, and we're always trying to draw more people into the ecosystem. So that's one thing. The second thing that we do is actually invest and accelerate startups, invest into and accelerate startups. So we have our flagship accelerator program that we do every spring, where we invest into 6 to 10 leading fintech startups. So in our first program, we just invested into Hungarian companies, and then we looked international in the region last year, and now this year we even have companies from London, from the UK and Estonia. So we're getting increasingly global, and we're proud that we're able to attract them here to Budapest. And I think part of it is because of the strong regulatory environment, but also because at MKB we were one of the first to come out with a sandbox. So I think those are some of our differentiators. Then the third pillar of activity is actually brokering partnerships. So we prioritize the companies that are in our portfolio and try to sell them to MKB and try to get them a commercial deal. But we've also been part of different, anytime there's a need or a business need for an innovation or a technology project, that usually will go through us. So we've been involved in a few partnerships with later stage companies as well. And we hope to do more of that as our portfolio companies grow up, and also as as we get closer and try to do more innovative activities inside MKB. Okay. And then the fourth pillar is what we call strategic design, and this is basically kind of the discovery and research phase of digital product development. So we are also doing this, supporting MKB in its own project developments, working on various things there. And as we see, the product development process inside a large corporate can be slow and a little bit old-fashioned at times. And we have knowledge from working with startups and working in innovative ways and bringing in those methodologies and talents inside the bank. So that's an area that is newer for us, but we're really excited about that, and even maybe starting to do that with outside clients as well.
Got it. Do you have any names that you want to share in terms of the companies from your portfolio? Any big successes from the program?
Yeah, so like the company you mentioned at the start of the podcast, Fintech Blocks, that's sort of our biggest and maybe nicest success story to date. That was really a match made in heaven. MKB was specifically looking for a company to build the PSD2 sandbox. They had offers from a couple of the bigger players, I think like IBM and Oracle, for 5x the price. We found them a startup that would do it for cheaper and even a more customized, tailored experience. That was Fintech Blocks. We were fortunate to be their first reference project inside Hungary, which was a great success, and they've gone on to sell similar services to 3 or 4 other banks. So we're happy. It was cost savings for MKB. We get, we're happy to, our revenue, our equity stake is valuable in them as they continue to grow. Another company from our first batch, Blue Ops, was just recently recognized on the Wealth Tech 100 list. So our companies are starting to get some international recognition and winning awards. So it's great, and I think almost all of them are still alive, which is also
that's
a
really
success.
important. That's a good metrics, of course. So now, if you're a new fintech startup and you're thinking about Hungary, what recommendations do you have for international fintech startups that are looking to enter the Hungarian market? What they should focus on, or what should they think about, and what's kind of unusual about your market here?
Yeah, so I would say Hungary is a great place for fintech because of the support from the regulators and the growing ecosystem. Some of the challenges that we see are demographic. So even though there's a very high cell phone penetration, I think even over 100%, the Hungarian population still hasn't really picked up on using digital services as much like as in the US, for example. Cash is still really strongly used here, maybe not as much as in Germany, but it's still a factor. And the older generation is it's really hard to reach with any kind of innovative new service. But I think this is changing, and I whether or not people aren't using digital services because they're not digital or because the value propositions aren't totally there yet, it's not sure. So I think it's ripe for opportunity, and I think things are going to pick up more as the millennial generation grows up and becomes bigger users.
All right, there's a lot of interesting and useful information. Thank you very much for your time, Mary.
Thanks for having me.
All right, bye.